Okay, let's go ahead and do that.
Your Honor, 827 is present.
Please be seated. Good afternoon, sir. You will continue to be referred to as Juror H27. The attorneys are going to ask you questions about the questionnaire you filled out on Tuesday morning, and we're going to begin with Mr. De La Ronda. Yes.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
We're going to refer to you as the court stated as H27.
Yes, sir.
And you know what? You're here. This is the first part of trying to pick a jury. We're talking, focusing just on what you filled out of the questionnaire, what you've heard about the case, what comments you've made, if any, or comments have been made to you, that kind of stuff.
Yes, sir.
Okay? Now, I've got here that you only put, in terms of what you've heard about the case, just TV news clips.
It's been mainly on the TV news, some discussions with coworkers,
Okay.
that sort of thing.
So TV news clips would be what, local stations, national stations, both?
Mostly local.
Okay, which local?
I usually listen to Channel 9.
Okay. And so no national?
So I sometimes tune into national news,
Sure.
but basically usually local news.
Okay, yeah, and when I say national, obviously, I'm not asking you in terms of national like Fox or CNN or whatever. I'm talking about related to this case. You have not listened to anything related to this case on national news?
If I've tuned into CNN and they run a clip, I might have heard some, but I haven't gone looking for it.
Okay, so CNN is the only one?
That's usually who I go to if I go to national.
Okay. And is there any particular reason you go to CNN?
I just remember what it is on my
Oh,
remote.
okay.
I think it's channel 200 and 202 on my remote.
No, and do you think CNN has got a bias one way or the other? Some people think it's more liberal, versus like Fox is more conservative.
I've heard some of that, but I haven't really noticed.
Okay. And how about the newspaper? Any reading of the newspaper, getting any information about the case from the newspaper?
Yeah, I read the paper. I bring it to work. We do the crossword puzzle, things
Gotcha,
like that.
gotcha. But you don't recall reading about this case in the newspaper, or you did?
I probably read some about it.
Okay, okay. I'm just trying to get the sources, and then I'll talk about what you remember about from each source, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Because the reason I'm asking, you only put TV news clips, so I'm trying to jot your memory to see if there was
Yeah, that's
anything else.
primary.
Okay.
Primary source.
How about on the internet? Do you do any like Facebooking?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay. And anything else regarding the internet?
No, we might have had some conversations. My sister's a cop in Las Vegas.
Oh, okay.
She might have asked me, hey, I heard about this case. Is this close to you? That sort of thing.
And I know you've provided some information already here on your questionnaire, so we're on purpose, just like we're referring to you as H27, we're also not commenting about where you work. Do you understand? On
Yes,
purpose.
sir.
I know where you work, so I'm not going to ask you, but so if I ask you anything regarding this reference, I already know where you work. You don't have to tell me.
Okay.
Do you understand from the media standpoint, so they don't know where you work, unless you want to tell them, but you don't have to.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the reason, as you mentioned, your sister's a cop in Las Vegas, you don't need to tell anything more other than that, unless you want to.
Okay.
Now, when you say you talked to your sister, you're talking about just on the phone, you talked to her about the case, or she asked you about the case?
Mainly on Facebook because of irregular hours, and
I got you. They're 3 hours.
she'll pop up that she's online, and we'll send a message back. and
Gotcha.
forth.
Anything else related to any other internet source?
No, I'm not real big at tweeting or any of that stuff.
You've never posted anything about this case at all?
I don't think I posted, but I might have discussed it with some other people I know.
Well, okay. Anything else regarding the internet or anything like that?
I donated to the defense fund some time ago.
You did.
Yes.
When you say defense fund, you're talking about George Zimmerman's GZ?
Yeah, that was through the internet.
Okay. And, okay, I'm just trying to write these down as you're speaking. Donated to, and how long ago was that, you think?
It was right when it started.
So was that through a PayPal, or was that?
Yeah, I believe it was PayPal. I figured you guys probably had a list of donors.
Okay. How much did you donate?
I think it was $20.
Okay. And is there a reason why you donated?
It just seemed like he was an underdog. There was marches against him, death threats. Couldn't work, had to go into hiding. Just seemed he was getting piled on. I kind of felt sorry for.
Okay. Yeah, you're the first juror we've had that has donated to either side or has been involved, and that's why I asked. Is that the only time, or did you donate again?
I believe it was just the one time.
Okay. How come you didn't donate when there later was like a GZ Legal or whatever other sites were?
Well, they had a lot of outside people coming in and leading marches and a lot of media coverage, and it seemed the media was pretty much allied against him. And
So you felt he was the underdog, Mr.
Yes.
Zimmerman, I say?
Yes.
Right, is that what you referred to, the underdog?
Yes.
Okay, do you still feel that way?
Pretty much. When the media refers to him, they tend to seem to me to be biased.
Right. And you don't believe you're biased at all?
I have an opinion, but I'd be open-minded to any kind of evidence that I haven't heard yet.
Okay, so your opinion is what?
I think Mr. Zimmerman was trying to do the right thing, and things kind of spiraled out of control.
Why do you think he was trying to do the right thing?
Central Florida's got a big crime problem. I'd heard that there was burglaries and problems in his neighborhood, and he was just, I think, just trying to look out for his neighbors.
But how do you believe he wasn't in the wrong in what he did?
That's my opinion from what
No,
from
I
what I've
understand. I'm
heard.
just trying to get what you base your opinion, because you're saying Central Florida's got a big crime problem?
I'd heard that there had been burglaries in the neighborhood and possibly other problems, and he saw someone suspicious, and he called the police and tried to keep an eye on him until the police could arrive and do their job.
Sure. And so you're pretty committed that that's what your belief is on that, correct?
That's
Object on ultimate issue grounds.
Sustained.
Do you-
that's my opinion from what I've heard so far, but I probably haven't heard the whole story.
Go ahead, ask your next question.
Okay, so you believe at this time that he was right in what he did, I think you've already stated, correct?
Correct.
Okay, what other basis do you have for believing what he did, other than there was crimes in the neighborhood and Central Florida's got a big crime area? Right.
That's mainly it. I've been in the same situation where I've been in my house. I see someone acting suspicious. I haven't followed them. The police get there. By the time they get there, the person's long gone.
Oh, so you can relate to that,
Yes.
Mr. Zimmerman was frustrated that the person was gone? Is that what you mean?
Yes, I've had the same thing happen in my neighborhood.
Gotcha. Are you also a neighborhood watch guy?
No.
Okay, you're just a homeowner who cares about your property and doesn't like burglars and that guy and stuff?
Correct. We've got our neighbors in our corner of the street kind of look out for each other,
Sure.
call each other, hey, I saw somebody by your house. That's
I
what
got you. So you had a similar circumstance where you saw somebody breaking into your house, or?
No, they were walking around kind of looking at houses. We didn't recognize them, and the house was empty, and we were concerned.
My objection is outside the scope of the limited nature of this aspect.
Sustained, these are the kinds of questions that can be asked during regular voir dire.
I believe this is germane to his bias in terms of publicity, in terms of knowledge.
Well, you can ask him questions about what publicity he has heard
I'll
or
do-
listened to.
sure.
Thank you.
Okay. I would also suggest that this kind of question would be individual regarding this particular juror, so not to contaminate all the other jurors about his personal beliefs in terms of his personal doings in relation to this case.
The objection is sustained.
Okay. You still feel that you can be objective?
Yes, sir.
You have not formed an opinion in this case?
I have an opinion, but I've got an open mind also.
Okay. So you have formed an opinion?
Yes.
Okay. Why did you in your questionnaire put that you had not formed an opinion?
If I'd read the follow-up question to that, I would have answered it differently, but I wasn't solid in my opinion, but could be open-minded. The questionnaire made it sound like an absolute opinion.
Well, you just, I think, stated a few minutes ago that you had formed an opinion as to the guilt or innocence, or you believe he was innocent, right?
I can approach it with an open mind.
Okay, there's an objection. What's the objection?
The mischaracterization of the prospective juror's statement.
Okay, he gave an answer that he could keep an open mind.
So you're saying that you made a mistake. You should have put on there that You had formed an opinion as to the guilt or innocence, correct?
Yes,
Okay, so it should have been yes, correct?
correct.
Okay. But you're saying that then you would have answered question number 4, that you, regardless of that opinion, you could have kept an open mind.
That's
You
correct.
would keep an open mind.
I marked that one before I read the following question.
Okay. Well, tell me about why you wanted to say yes. Why did you want to say yes as to question number 3, that you had formed an opinion as to the defendant's guilt or innocence?
Because I think I can keep an open mind and it's not an absolute opinion.
Well, how absolute is it? Or how firm is it?
I don't know,
80%? 90%? 100%? 95%?
maybe 70%.
Okay. And you feel 70% you can still keep an open mind?
Sure.
Haven't you kind of made up your mind already?
All I've heard is the media accounts. I haven't heard all the evidence, and I'm sure there's a lot that hasn't been brought out yet.
Well, what have you heard in the media events that convince you that he's innocent?
His story seems to jive with what the witnesses are, that he was on the ground, that the victim was on top of him. If he was out for no good, he wouldn't have called 911 and been on the call with the emergency operator if he was out to start some trouble. You don't call the cops and have them come if you're out to no good.
Okay. But why else do you believe he was innocent? He is innocent.
I believe that you're entitled to self-defense. You feel your life is in danger, and this sounds like it might qualify as that.
And why is that?
Apparently, he had the victim on top of him, beating his head into the sidewalk, and that seems to me that I'd feel my life was in danger if I was in those circumstances also.
Okay. So in other words, you're firm in your belief that he was being beaten and he had the right to use self-defense?
That seems to be what has been reported so far.
Okay. And that's what you're relying on?
Yes.
So you go in with a premise that that's accurate?
No.
Well,
That's what I've heard so far, but that doesn't mean that's the whole story or that's the whole truth. The media is out to have people watch the news and to sell newspapers, not to actually tell the truth.
You think the media has all been in favor of or against Mr. Zimmerman?
Mostly. One of the news outlets was in trouble for doctoring a 911 recording that they played.
So really, you've done an extensive review of this case, haven't you?
I watched the news, and even if I don't watch the news, you've got teaser clips during the network shows.
Okay. Well, tell me what else you remember about the case.
That's most of it. He was following him at a distance. He lost sight of him. He was walking back to his truck when the victim approached him from behind. There was an altercation. He was hit, knocked to the ground, and the victim was on top of him, beating on him, and there was a witness that also saw that.
Who was the witness?
I don't think they identified him. One of the people that called 911.
But how did you gain that? How did you get that information that there was a witness that saw him?
It was on one of the news channels.
Okay. And what else have you heard?
That was most of it.
Okay. So after reviewing that part of it, you came to the conclusion or the opinion that he was innocent, correct?
Correct.
Okay. What else have you heard? Have you heard anything negative about what Mr. Zimmerman did?
I heard that there was an altercation at a bar or something like that.
Tell me about that.
Some type of altercation. I don't remember if he was convicted or.
Oh, you're talking about Mr. Zimmerman?
Yes.
Okay, I misunderstood. Okay. And how does that factor into your opinion at all about whether he's guilty or innocent?
It didn't sound like anything serious.
You think people have a right to get into fights at a bar?
I don't remember if he was arrested for it and released, or if it went to court. Didn't really hear any details besides.
Do you remember who the media stated he got into a fight with?
I think it might have been a security guard or an off-duty cop or something like that.
So that in your assessment of the facts didn't factor it in against Mr. Zimmerman at all?
I didn't really hear if it went anywhere, if it was just ran into someone and they arrested him, and it was dropped, or if it went further.
If it went further, you think you could still be fair to Mr. Zimmerman? Having known that?
I could be fair, but that might factor into, my judgment of character.
Tell me about that. What do you mean by that?
Well, someone that's never been in trouble before, you tend to give them more breaks than someone that's constantly had run-ins.
May I object, again, outside the limited scope of this?
Since he's inquiring about information that he had heard in the media regarding that, I will give some leeway.
Tell me if you could about that. What did you mean? That you're saying if he had gotten in trouble before that? I can't speak for you. You got to tell me.
If someone's a chronic offender, then they've kind of developed a pattern of behavior. If someone maybe has had one altercation in 5 or 10 years, then that's more forgivable than someone that has one every 6 months.
I got you. What else have you heard about the case?
That's most of it. A lot of talk about the outside people coming in and trying to turn it into a racial issue, which I don't really think it was.
What did you think of the outside people coming in? When you say outside people, what do you mean?
There's some people that make a living off of stirring things up and trying to turn things into a racial issue when there really is none.
I got you. And who were those people?
Mr. Jackson and Mr. Sharpton.
You don't like those people, I gather, by your comments?
Not
Okay.
particularly. They seem to just be out there to stir up trouble and get their face on the news.
What else have you heard?
That's most of what I've heard. I
Okay.
haven't really followed the case that much, but just what I've seen on the news.
And the information that you gleaned from the news, was that at the beginning or throughout?
I turn on the news in the morning to check
Okay.
for traffic and weather to
Sure.
go to work, and I think I heard about it the morning after.
You mentioned that on the internet. I'm sorry, I interrupted. Were you finished, sir?
Excuse me?
Were you done, or did I
Yes.
interrupt? I apologize. So you basically just in the morning or when you get home from work, you see it?
Yes.
Okay. Have you done any research on the internet?
No, not really.
Okay. Well, how did it come about that you ended up sending money towards Mr. Zimmerman's defense?
It was on the news.
No, I understand, but you just kind of you're saying you don't really believe the news, or you do?
Well, they said that there was a defense fund, and I went to the site, and it said you could donate by PayPal, so.
Right. I guess my question is, how did you decide that you wanted to contribute to his defense fund if you weren't sure that the media was accurate? I thought you said earlier that you didn't always believe what the media said.
True.
It seems like you came to the conclusion that the media was accurate and that you needed to contribute to his campaign or to his fund, didn't you?
It seemed, well, they seemed biased, but they seemed biased against him.
So you didn't believe the media, or you did?
I figured there's some truth in it, but I didn't know if it was 100% correct. They portrayed the victim initially as being about 10 or 12 years old by their picture.
Was it more because you were anti-victim in this case, or because you were pro-Zimmerman?
I was pro-Zimmerman.
Okay, but I guess what I'm still having a hard time understanding is, if you felt the media, what they stated was not accurate, what made you decide to contribute to his fund? In other words, because all you've said right now is you're saying supported Zimmerman, but you're saying that wasn't accurate.
Well, I'm not saying that they don't report any of the story. I'm saying they slant it to whatever's going to create a sensation and keep people watching.
Sure.
That doesn't mean that it's not some truth in it.
Okay. Well, what you've told me so far is that you believe Mr. Zimmerman was defending himself because he was acting as a homeowner out there and he saw somebody suspicious and followed. And what did he do?
He
When
was
saw
trying to follow him while on the phone with the 911 people.
And then tell me again what you believe happened?
The story that I heard was that he had lost sight of the victim. He was returning to his vehicle, and that the victim approached him. There was an altercation, and the victim hit him, broke his nose, and knocked him to the ground, and was beating his head against the sidewalk.
Okay. And you believe that to be true?
I saw pictures that showed him with injuries that supported that, and there was a witness that said he saw the victim on top of the defendant.
So in other words, you believe that all to be true, or at least,
The pictures and
Sure.
the seem to support it.
so you already concluded certain things were accurate? Right.
Pictures could have been staged, but
No, but I mean, it's just your opinion is what counts, it
Yes.
doesn't matter what. And that's why you ended up contributing money to his defense fund?
yes,
Okay, so you already came to the conclusion that this man was being framed, or he was innocent, and then you decided, based on what you knew from the media, that you wanted to contribute to his campaign fund,
correct.
right? Okay, but, and you don't think that in any way means that you're biased in favor of Mr. Zimmerman and against the state of Florida?
I have a favorable opinion now, but I can have an open mind if I see evidence to the contrary.
You don't think the fact that you've already sent money to his, don't you have kind of a stake in this already?
Well, I can see where you're coming from with that.
I mean, let's be perfectly honest here.
Yes.
When you agree, how many, have you ever heard of,
I object. Mr. Dillerton is suggesting somehow that this juror hasn't been honest.
I don't think that that's what the question was, so. The question was,
Let's be
Did-
perfectly honest, was the predicate to the
okay, we'll rephrase your question.
And
Thank
that this area is outside the limited purpose of this part of jurisprudence.
Overruled.
you've got a stake in this. You've already contributed to his cause, correct?
Correct?
The trial, and you still think, even though you've already contributed to his defense, that you can sit there and just want everybody to disregard the fact that you've contributed to his defense?
I
You
didn't
think
say
that's
that.
being fair?
I said I could keep an open mind.
I apologize.
Thank you.
I said I could keep an open mind. I would not want to say whether he was guilty or innocent without listening to all the facts.
Right, but you've already contributed to his fund.
True. And I was honest about that.
Right.
I'm not trying to hide anything.
You don't think you would have found out, somebody would have found out?
Probably would have. That's why I was upfront about it.
Sustained.
I think
The
you stated-
questionnaire asked if I can keep an open mind, and I believe I could keep an open mind.
Right. The other question I had is, don't you think that would have been important to put on the questionnaire under question 6?
I kind of expected to have another questionnaire to be vetted before being questioned in court like this.
In other words, the question number 6 was, is there any other matter not covered by this questionnaire that should be brought to the attention of the courts because it would affect your ability to be a fair and impartial juror? You don't think at that time you should have put on there that you contributed to his defense fund?
That might affect whether you think that I can be fair or not, but I don't think that that matters whether I can be fair or not.
But don't you think it would have been a good thing to let both sides in the court know that? Up front? If you weren't trying to hide anything?
Objection again, asked and answered.
Overruled.
Don't you think that would have been important for you to put that down if you weren't trying to hide anything?
No, you didn't ask me about Facebook posts or whether I discussed this at my work. There was a lot of things that might affect your opinion about whether I can be impartial that I didn't put on there.
Okay, what other things could affect your opinion about whether you can be impartial? Please educate us.
What you've already asked me, whether I've discussed it with friends, whether I've made Facebook posts. There's probably a long list of things that you'd like to ask.
Okay, tell me about those. What, with the discussions with friends, you opinionated that you thought he was innocent, I'm assuming, right?
It's happening locally. I have friends that live in Lake Mary, Sanford, Longwood, that live closer to those areas than I do. So of course it's a matter of discussion.
Of course, and you stated your opinion was that you thought he was innocent.
Sure, we have some people that think that he was stalking the poor kid and shot him in cold blood, and others that
Sure.
think he acted in self-defense. You've got all sorts of opinions.
Right, and you were of the side that you felt he was innocent and acted in self-defense.
Correct.
You've prejudged this case.
Not prejudged, but I have an opinion.
Okay, and that opinion is pretty firm.
Well, we already said about probably 70%.
70, what did you say, 70%?
That's what we said earlier.
Okay, all right. Now, tell me the discussions you had with people friends or co-workers you said that there were some of the opinion that thought that Mr. Zimmerman was guilty, correct?
Of course.
What did they argue on behalf of the fact that they thought Mr. Zimmerman was guilty?
No, that it was justified that he's following this poor kid, and the poor kid was just defending himself.
Okay. And you didn't think he was following him, correct?
No, I don't think that just because you think you're being followed means you can attack someone.
So you do believe that Mr. Zimmerman was following Trayvon Martin?
Sure.
Okay, you do believe that?
That's admitted to. They have telephone transcripts of him telling the operator that.
Okay, so I appreciate you telling us that. When you heard of that, you came to the conclusion that that was accurate, correct?
They have him on tape saying that, yeah, I'm watching him until the police get here.
And so in other words, he was following to make sure that Mr. Trayvon Martin didn't get away because he thought he was a criminal?
Objection. That mischaracterizes what this prospective juror said. It's a conclusion that Mr. Delarionda wants to ask this juror to assent to.
I'm trying to get him, I'll be glad to ask.
Rephrase your question, please.
When you said that you came to the conclusion that Mr. Zimmerman was following Trayvon Martin, what do you mean by that?
He was trying to keep him in sight so that he could point him out to the deputies when they came, and they could see if he belonged in the neighborhood or had a criminal history and whether he's up to no good or not.
Right. And your belief was what related to the facts as you know him, that Mr. Trayvon Martin was up to no good, or what was he doing there?
He was apparently acting suspicious. I never heard to what extent, if he was looking in people's windows or what the suspicious behavior was.
So you believe Mr. Zimmerman's statement about that he was acting suspicious?
Well, I guess that's his opinion of how he was acting.
You agreed with that?
I agree that that was his opinion. I wasn't there and I didn't hear details on what the suspicious behavior was.
Right. So then how did you come to the ultimate conclusion, 70% that he is innocent?
It boils down to, did something happen where you're in an altercation where you're fearful of your life?
Right, but you already assumed as concrete fact that Mr. Zimmerman had the right to defend himself,
Correct.
right? Okay.
The stand your ground law.
Right. Are you a big proponent of the stand your ground law, I gather?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And does that factor into the equation of your belief that Mr. Zimmerman is innocent?
Yes, the law states.
Object as well. It's still outside the scope here. Now we're
Sustained.
talking about legal.
That's sustained.
Did you hear as part of the media commentary about this case about stand your ground?
Yes.
Okay. Tell me about that, what you heard about that.
Well, what I've heard about the law,
No, well, just related to this case.
that if you're fearful for your life, that you don't have to run away or try to escape. If you're in your house, you don't have to run out the back door.
Right.
You can stand your ground.
Okay. And what you did in terms of the commentary, in terms of your conclusion here, or your opinion about 70% that he's innocent, you applied your understanding of what the law was said related to this case to this facts, right?
You can't retreat if someone's on top of you attacking you.
Well, how do you know that somebody was on top of Mr. Zimmerman?
That's what I heard that his statement was, and there's a witness that verified it.
So you've already concluded that his statement was accurate.
No. I'm stating that that was his statement, and there is a witness that corroborates it.
You've already concluded that that statement by a witness corroborates what he said.
Seems to.
Okay. But you still feel that you can just disregard that if that's not accurate?
If you have two witnesses that say they saw something else and possibly this other one was biased. Like I said, I'd like to hear all the statements from both sides before making a concrete decision.
You mentioned conversations with, was it your sister? I think you said that's what cop?
Yes,
Did I get that right? I don't know if it was your sister or brother. I apologize.
sister.
Okay. Did you have discussions with her about the case?
Basically, did you hear about this? Did this happen close to you? That sort of thing. Was it, she didn't ask, I don't remember any details.
No. Did you give her your opinion too about that he was innocent?
I don't recall. It was
Okay.
back when the news first broke,
Okay.
over a year ago.
And I don't mean to keep re-asking this. When you contribute to the fund, when was it? I don't know that I asked you that before.
$20.
No, not how much. I apologize. When was it?
When? Shortly after it was established, when there was the marches and the death threats and all the,
Gotcha. This happened in February of 2012, for points of reference, February 26th. Do you recall how soon after that?
when the news said that they've started a defense fund, that he's in hiding, he can't work, and
Okay. Was that before he was arrested or after he was arrested?
it was after, I believe.
Okay. Was Mr. Romero already his attorney, to your knowledge, at the time you contributed to his fund?
I don't recall
Okay.
who started when.
Now, have you said you had or had not commented about this case?
You mean on Facebook?
Yeah, or anywhere?
Well, there might have been some discussions with people. I've got some friends that are out of state, and they might have commented, and I might have commented back. I don't recall specifics.
Do you have on your, is Facebook a thing where you can put like likes and dislikes kind of things? My wife and kids do. I don't.
Oh, yeah.
Don't you have something where you can put favorites or something?
Yes.
Do you have anything on that Facebook related to the case?
I really couldn't tell you yes or no.
Okay. Might you have a picture of George Zimmerman on your Facebook account?
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
I don't think so. I'm not saying for sure.
Okay. If you had, so you don't think you have, okay. If you had, wouldn't you agree that that would show really a bias in favor of Mr. Zimmerman?
I would, it's outside the limited nature of this.
Overruled.
I don't know if it was showing a bias. I already told you my opinion is inclined towards him, but I don't say it would be biased.
So you believe if a juror has contributed to somebody's fund, defense fund, and then might have a picture of George Zimmerman on their Facebook, that juror could still be objective?
Yes.
You think that would be true also if somebody was in favor of Trayvon Martin, had a picture of Trayvon Martin that contributed to any kind of fund to help the family, that would still be objective on the other side too?
I would like to think anyone would be objective when they're dealing in a case like this.
Okay. I gather you've never been a juror before, have you?
No, I
This
haven't.
is your first time?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm sorry to quiz you about this. Have you mentioned anything else on Facebook related to this case?
I don't recall. I may have, I may not.
Well,
There was a lot of talk about the marches.
Tell me about what you recall, if you did post, what you did post about that.
That I think that Mr. Zimmerman was trying to be a good neighbor and had a 17-year-old that probably, at 17 you think you're bulletproof and 10 feet tall.
So you've already come to that conclusion based on what?
I remember being a 17-year-old.
Okay. So we would have to prove otherwise to you, correct?
I'm just saying that was my personal experience at that age.
And you would factor that in?
I wouldn't jump on an adult at that age, but you take a lot of chances that you wouldn't normally at older age.
So you believe that Mr. Trayvon Martin, already because of his age, was more daring, I guess, to use my word?
I would object again outside the scope. Now we're asking this prospective.
Sustained.
Judge, I'm responding to his question or his comment that I'm just asking.
You can stick to Facebook, the media.
Okay, you mentioned in Facebook something about, I guess, Mr. Trayvon Martin was 17 years old. Tell me a little bit about that.
Heard he was 17, that he'd been suspended from school. He was up here with his father. That was most of it. They never did say I don't believe what he was suspended for, but
Would that be germane to you? Would that be important to know?
if he had a history of fighting and violent behavior, yes, that would be appropriate.
And did you already come to the conclusion that he did have that history?
No, I'm saying if he did, that I don't know if that's what he was suspended for or not.
Okay. Well, if you were if you heard no evidence of whether he was suspended or not, nothing about what happened at school, could you forget about that in arriving at your decision in this case?
Yes.
Okay.
I think his background would be the same as if Mr. Zimmerman had a history of violent behavior or run-ins with people.
What, did you tell me everything you had heard about Mr. Zimmerman?
Yes.
Have you made any other commentary on Facebook or any other social media about this case, any aspect of this case, whether about the protest or the people that were involved in the protest or that kind of stuff?
Sure. Just what I've already said, that we had some people trying to turn it into a racial thing, which I don't care if the person's black, white, Hispanic, Asian, whatever. If they're acting suspicious in my neighborhood, I'd be concerned. It wouldn't be, oh, there's a white kid over there acting suspiciously, but oh, he's probably not up to anything.
You keep this, I guess the second time you mentioned somebody in your neighborhood. You mentioned prior times. Is there a second time that somebody was acting suspicious in your neighborhood?
There have been several times.
Okay. And what was the color of the individuals that were acting suspicious in your neighborhood?
Again, I would object outside the scope of this. Now we're talking about an event completely unrelated to the circumstances of this case.
Okay.
Your Honor, he's the one that brought it out. I didn't elicit that from him, he on his own, so I think I should be able to.
And there wasn't an objection at that time, but that is more appropriate for the regular voir dire.
Tell me about the commentary you've made or haven't. Let's focus on what if you haven't made anything, I'm not worried about that or concerned about that. But you have made commentary about some of the people involved in the protests, you're saying?
Probably.
Tell me about those.
Just that people were coming in, getting people stirred up, trying to turn it into something that it's not. And the two people that I had problems with in my neighborhood were both white.
Okay. Did you call the police on those people?
Yes, I did.
Did you follow them with a gun?
The one person was sitting in front of my house in a car.
Your Honor, I didn't elicit this.
I understand, but we've got to keep this to the pretrial.
Yes, sir. Yes, Your Honor, I apologize.
Publicity and hardship. Thank you.
I'm going to move on to another subject
Okay.
matter. Still talking about your commentary on Facebook and other matters.
Pretty much what I've already told you, that I'm got an opinion on it, what my opinion is.
Did you use any inflammatory language or other inappropriate language when you made reference to any of the individuals that have commented about this case?
I don't normally.
Have you in this particular case, sir?
I couldn't say for sure. I've got some nieces, nephews on Facebook. I don't usually put anything I wouldn't want them to read.
Is it your objective here to get on this case?
Not really.
So you'd rather not be here?
Absolutely.
Okay. I gather you don't have some hardship?
I could probably come up with something if I wanted to,
But you want to serve?
I want to do the right thing.
Okay.
If you want to disqualify me for my donations or my opinion, then you're free to do that, but I'm not going to try to shirk my duty.
Yes, sir. No, I'm just trying to ask what you're here because as you know, you've heard of the term, people want to get in to help one side or the other, and they might misstate stuff.
I'm sure. No, I'm not looking to write a book in a couple of months or anything like that.
You got your jury summons, right?
Yes, sir.
And did you do any research on the case once you got that?
No.
Have you followed any of the proceedings that have occurred throughout this time?
I've had a few people make comments to me.
Tell me about that.
My neighbor asked my wife if I had been questioned last week because she saw a person my age and my description and asked if I had been on there.
Oh, okay, I got it.
So I found out that it was being...
You're not showing the photographs of the people, I see what you're saying.
Right, she asked if it was me, and I didn't realize it was being televised.
You understand they're not showing your picture?
Correct. It's a channel I don't get at home, so we didn't know about it.
Okay, other than that?
No, if someone asks me a question, I just tell them that I've just been basically sitting and waiting, and there's really nothing to tell.
Okay. And maybe I wasn't clear in my question. I'm talking about prior to coming Monday, in terms of when you came with the court and told you not to talk about the case. I'm talking about the time you got the subpoena. You follow me? Before you came to court. You didn't do any research at all?
I've pretty much had overload with this case, the Casey Anthony case, and I doubt there's much out there that hasn't been on the 6 o'clock news.
Okay. So have you ever gone on the internet and looked up this case to see what's going on?
No.
And the reason I ask is having contributed to his fund, I would have thought you would have been curious as to what's going on, just to see how he's doing or not, whether your small donation in some way helped or not. You know, did you already have?
It was all reported on the news. They had his website. They talked about how much he'd raised and
So you have
how
been-
much he'd spent, and then there was another surge of donations.
Are you a frequent visitor to his website?
I haven't been to that since the donation.
Only in the beginning?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anything else that you know about the case that you would like to tell us about?
That's pretty much all I've heard. I haven't looked for it, but it's pretty much a daily news item.
You have, I didn't understand.
I haven't looked for
Oh.
anything.
Within the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks or last month, you haven't heard anything about the case?
Just, upcoming jury selection and different motions and things like that.
Tell me about the motions you've heard about.
I don't remember specifics, just one side would make a motion and they'd accept it or not. I wasn't really paying attention to it.
Have you heard are you aware whether there are any recordings in this case?
As in,
Any type of, I can't tell you, I can't feed you like information and then say, oh, you're biased or whatever.
no, I heard that there was the 911 tapes, that there was some controversy about the background conversations. And
Tell me
the
about
recordings.
those, what you remember hearing about that.
That there were some experts that heard one thing and some other experts that said you really can't tell what it is or who's
What-
saying it.
Did you form an opinion as to that?
Not really. One set of experts say that you can't really tell, and the other experts say, well, we use some other technology and we can.
Right, which, do you believe one side or the other?
From what I heard on the tape, it sounds hard to decipher, but
So I'm sorry, you've actually listened to the tape itself?
what the news media's played.
Okay, that wasn't a trick question, I'm just saying, you're talking about the 911 recording where there's this, you've heard that tape itself?
Yeah,
there's
where
surprise.
they have voices in the background and
Sure.
they say, oh, that's George, no, that's Trayvon.
Which side do you come under?
I find it hard to tell which was which.
So it might be Trayvon Martin, you believe, that was yelling for help?
I would think that the person being assaulted would be the person yelling for help.
So you believe it's who?
I would believe it's George, but I would have a hard time deciphering a tape of that quality.
So if you only heard from one expert in the case, let's assume, and that expert said it's Trayvon Martin yelling, you would automatically disbelieve him?
I
I would object.
Sustained.
would, if he was the expert in the case, I would.
Sir, when I sustain an objection, that means you can't answer that
Okay.
question, so if you'll please wait for the next one.
What else, have you heard any other recordings?
That's all I'm aware of.
Okay. What else have you seen? I think I may have asked you about photographs. Have you seen any photographs in this case?
Yeah, they showed some photographs with Mr. Zimmerman with a broken nose and some blood on the back of his scalp.
And upon seeing the photograph, you determined that he had a broken nose?
It looked broken, and I believe that they said the medical report or the paramedics or whoever reported it.
So you've already concluded it, right?
It seemed to be from a third uninterested party.
Okay. What else did you, what other photographs have you seen?
I think that's most of it.
Any other photographs at all regarding Trayvon Martin?
There were some that were posted on the news, and then they said that it wasn't him, or I'm not
Sure. What did those photographs look like?
I don't remember.
Okay.
There was a few on the news, and they said later that it was somebody else on Facebook, that it wasn't him.
And the whole story, did they say why somebody had posted it or not?
Maybe it was someone with a similar name, or maybe it was on his Facebook page, but it was of a friend.
Okay, so you
Never heard an
know.
explanation.
What else? Any other recordings that you've heard?
I don't think so.
Okay. Now, have you heard commentary about the case?
Oh,
Not,
sure.
not at work. I'm talking about on the news media, like attorneys talking about the case.
I don't think so.
Did you hear from any of the attorneys representing Mr. Zimmerman, Mr. O'Mara or Mr. West?
Just anything that's been reported on the news channels.
Okay. Have you heard any news conference if they had any?
No, I don't really go to the news channels with the commentaries and he said, she said stuff.
Okay. How do you feel about the commentaries if attorneys did comment about the case? Do you automatically believe them or disbelieve them?
Take it with a grain of salt. There's probably some truth, probably
Okay.
some fabrication.
Would you hold it against the state if we didn't comment about the case?
Same thing. I'd take it with a grain of salt.
That we haven't commented against, so you think we should have?
Oh, I don't know if you have or not.
No, assuming we haven't.
You haven't?
Your Honor, I object to the assumption whether or not the state has made comments in the media.
There's no assumption.
Overruled.
In other words, my question is, if you only heard commentary from one side, could you be fair to the state if we have not commented about the case publicly?
Yes, that, you'd have to listen to both sides in court to get an honest opinion.
Having contributed to Mrs. Zimmerman's defense fund, weren't you curious in terms of what his attorneys were saying about what was going on in the case?
Excuse me?
Having contributed to Mr. Zimmerman's defense fund, weren't you curious as to what his attorneys were doing on behalf of Mr. Zimmerman?
Well, that was, the defense fund was also, from what I heard, for living expenses, for attorney fees, for, I heard bodyguards. So it wasn't just a matter of the defense, but also just keeping your family afloat.
Sure. And are you aware of how that money was spent?
I heard it was spent for all those, I
How
believe
did
all
you hear
those
that?
things.
How did you hear that?
On the news, when they were talking about how his funds were depleted and he had expenses for different things.
Okay. Did you read any books about the case?
No, I didn't know there were any books about the case.
Or any commentary at all, any news articles or any other stuff about the case?
No, just news or newspaper, and didn't really search for those, but if I saw an article, read it just for the knowledge.
I kept asking you about research, Mr. Zimmerman. Did you do any research on Mr. Trayvon Martin?
I wouldn't know where to look, except for the news channels.
Okay, I don't know if you just, Googled it or whatever. Did you think at all of contributing to the Martins family, the fact that they had lost a loved one?
I hadn't heard of a fund for them. I know there were a lot of memorials and things of that nature. They seem to have a large following and a lot of people to help them out.
So you weren't concerned about them, is what you're saying?
They seem to have their family covered. It was Mr. Martin's or Mr. Zimmerman's family that
Yes,
didn't seem to be getting much sympathy or marches
So
support.
based on your opinion or what you heard from the media, you felt that it was biased against Mr. Zimmerman?
Yes,
Okay. Do you believe that to be true throughout all, from the beginning till now?
pretty much from the beginning.
Okay. Do you think that's still true today?
Mostly.
Well, what recently have you heard that's still unfavorable to Mrs. Zimmerman?
He's still described as a man that shot an unarmed teen. They don't rarely mention the self-defense, or if they do, it's buried a few sentences later.
And you believe that the media is being negligent because they're not reporting everything in terms of that it is self-defense,
Correct.
right? Okay. Is there any other aspect of the case that you believe the media is being unfair to Mrs. Zimmerman recently?
Not recently. It seems to be fairly neutral recently.
Do you know why all of a sudden, in your opinion, the media is more neutral?
Pretty much all the facts are out. They've pretty much run out of things to report.
You mean that they've kind of, since the trial's getting close, they've all of a sudden now decided to be fair? Is that, I don't make,
No,
What do you
they're
mean by
not,
that?
they're really not reporting on the case so much as jury selection, and this is coming up, and
So it's
the
moved on.
motions
It's
about the recordings, that sort of thing.
Tell me, you mentioned the protests. How did you feel about them?
I think it was just to get people on the news, and it really wasn't a racial issue that,
Did you think the media was turning it into a racial issue?
they probably contributed.
Okay. Did you think anybody else, based on what you read in the news? I gather you didn't go to these rallies or protests, right?
No.
Okay. And is there any reason why, since you contributed to the defense fund, you didn't go to the rally?
It seemed to me that Mr. Zimmerman was defending himself at the time, and it seemed justified.
In other words,
I feel sympathy for the family that lost their son, but
you felt he was in the wrong
yes,
based on what you saw in the media?
based on what I've heard so far.
And you firm in that belief, I think you said 70%, right?
Correct.
So what would the state have to prove to you in order to prove that he is guilty?
That Mr. Zimmerman initiated the confrontation.
By
that-
doing what? Following him? I think you've already stated he followed him, but other than
Correct.
that.
That doesn't,
I object. Mr. Durand is attempting to elicit specific facts.
I'm going to sustain the objection.
Based on the media knowledge, is there anything else you want to bring to our attention about your commentary about this case, or in the media or on Facebook related to the media, that you think we should know? And the reason I ask, I want to give you an opportunity because previously you hadn't told us about the fund. Is there anything else that you think?
I brought up the fund.
Oh, I apologize. On the questionnaire, you had not brought it up. I apologize. You did bring it up here. You're right. I'm talking about on the questionnaire. Is there anything else that you think might be germane for either side to know about your feelings about this case?
I think I was honest about my opinion, and that's the opinion I've shared with my friends, that it's a shame that a young man was killed, but I think Mr. Zimmerman was in self-defense.
Have you looked at the law in self-defense in arriving, or is it just what the media portrayed?
It's been printed in conjunction with this case and other cases, what the stand your ground law is and
So you,
how it's applied.
right, so you relied on the media statement of what the law is to apply it to arrive at your conclusion.
I've read it in
Right.
other, not just the media, but from other sources as far as stand your ground.
What other sources?
I don't know if the state website, maybe, I'm not sure.
Okay, so you did your own research once you were on Stand Your Ground too?
Back when it was first passed, I wanted to see the background on it.
Okay, I apologize.
Not in conjunction with this case, but beforehand.
So you had already a working knowledge?
Yes.
Okay. Did your opinion ever change, or has it been pretty firm that he's an innocent man? From the beginning to now, you had that belief, right? You've never vacillated on it.
Pretty much. I've been looking to see the developments and you know, how it goes.
But still, everything based on everything, the knowledge you have, you firm believe that he's innocent.
So far, yes.
Okay. And did you say you watched CNN related to this case, correct?
I've watched it. They probably had news coverage on it. I don't recall specifics.
How about Fox?
I occasionally watch that, but it's easier just to find CNN or headline news.
Okay. Have you listened to anything on Fox related to this case?
On TV?
Yes, sir. I apologize. Fox TV.
I don't recall if they were reporting on this or not. I'm not a regular watcher of that channel.
Okay. Any of the news or any of the people that have their own shows, nothing related to this case?
I occasionally watch Sean Hannity or some of those
Sure.
shows, but it's rare. I'm going through the channels. I'll watch to see what's on, and I'm not a regular watcher or anything.
Did you watch anything on Sean Hannity related to this case?
No, I don't think he's covered it, as far as I know.
And you stated you do believe everything on the media, or you don't?
I take it with a grain of salt.
I guess that still comes back, and I apologize if hopefully I'm not repeating myself, but if you take it with a grain of salt, then how did you arrive at a decision to send money to Mr. Zimmerman's fund?
That's the 30% of my opinion that's unsure.
So that's why you contributed to his fund, because you 30% is unsure?
The 70% made me donate to his fund. The 30% says I need to hear both sides of the story before I make up my mind.
But you're more than 50-50, right?
Sure.
In the discussions you had with your friends, did you say some of them took the position that he was guilty?
Sure.
And were those people at friends or family?
Co-workers.
Okay. How many of the co-workers? Don't name who they are or anything. How many of them? What percentage, I guess what I'm trying to ask. The people you had discussions with, how many?
A smaller percentage of people.
Like 5%, 10%?
10%, 15%.
Okay. And when they argued his guilt to you, did any one of them ever make a point that you thought, well, that's a valid point?
Sure.
Tell me one of those points.
That by following the kid, that he might have caused the confrontation.
So
Kid might have felt threatened, and that's what caused the confrontation, which led up to the shooting.
So in other words, that Mr. Zimmerman followed him and caused the confrontation,
That's their belief.
right? And did you just summarily dismiss it, or did you give it any weight?
I don't think that just because you think you're being followed gives you the right to assault someone.
I'm sorry, just because you're saying as if you don't believe that it's true that Mr. Zimmerman was following him, that gives Mr. Martin the right to assault him because you concluded that Mr. Martin assaulted him.
I believe that he has a right to follow a person without being attacked.
I know, I'm saying, based on your knowledge of the media and what other people have told you, you've come to the conclusion that Mr. Martin Trayvon Martin attacked Mr. Zimmerman.
That is what's been reported so far.
Okay. And that is your belief, why you have the 70%.
Correct.
All right. Anything else that you would want to enlighten us about this case that you have knowledge of? This is our only opportunity to ask you these questions. There's no other jurors, you understand, in terms of what you know about the case. Because I'm just trying to find out what else you know about the case, or what you've heard, or what other comments you may have made in the case on Facebook or anything about it.
I think any comments I made are consistent with what I've told you, and I can't really think of anything that would be relevant at this time.
How about commentary about any of the people that have commented about his innocence, or that in terms of his innocence, or the fact that he's guilty?
Everyone's entitled to their opinion. I might not be fond of their opinion, but that's their right.
The officials that you mentioned, did you mention their names, the people that are involved in the protests or rallies or
Yes.
whatever? I think you mentioned, did you say Jesse Jackson and Sean Hannity? Anybody else that you think from?
Al Sharpton.
I'm sorry, Al Sharpton. What did I say? I said Sean.
Sean Hannity.
I should have said Sean Hannity, I apologize. Anybody else?
No, that was it.
Okay. Was there anybody of a national stature that you felt made inappropriate comments related to this case that you may have commented about?
Not that I can think of.
Okay.
I think we did mention that President Obama made a comment about Trayvon,
Sure.
but he tends not to mention our heroes overseas or Medal of Honor winners kind of get bypassed, but he likes to comment on local issues like Mr. Martin or other celebrities and
Sure.
bypass the people that should be mentioned.
Yes, sir. And I appreciate your comments about people serving overseas in our country, but aside from that, you felt Mr. Obama's comments were inappropriate?
He was taking a side in the case when it still hadn't been decided yet.
Isn't that true of yourself?
I'm not, don't have a national platform to spread my opinion.
So you're critical of the fact that he doesn't because he has a national platform?
Well, he's in a leadership position, and people are going to put weight on his opinion.
And I gather if, I'll struck that. I have a number on it. You recall, by the way, that you did make a comment regarding on Facebook regarding Spike Lee?
About who?
Spike Lee?
I don't recall if I made a comment. I think he's weighed in on it.
Right. And wouldn't you on Facebook have made a comment about it? And
That's
I'm
not,
related to this case, not just Spike Lee in general.
yeah, that's not normally someone I'd make comments to or about, but he might have made a comment on somewhere I was looking.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Thank you. Mr. West?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Don West. I'm an attorney along with Mark O'Mara for George Zimmerman that you see over here. And Robert Hirschhorn is in the middle helping us out. Thanks for your patience here today. I'll try to be brief. It seems as though your questioning by Mr. Delariando pretty extensively explored your knowledge of the case from the media.
Yes, sir.
So I would try not to dwell on that very much, unless there's something offhand that you think of as we talk that you want to offer. There's really, this part of the proceeding, as you know, is sorting out what people have heard. There's other questions that would be asked later on about other things. So I'll also limit my questions to what you've heard. And then the other part of it, maybe the most important part, is how has that affected you and whether or not any opinions that you hold could be set aside and that you could make your decision in the case based solely on the evidence that you hear from the courtroom. In other words, while we can't erase people's memories, people can judge for themselves whether they think they can set information aside and limit their decision based only on evidence in the courtroom. That's what I'm getting at here.
Yes, sir.
Just to clarify a couple of things, are you saying that based upon your exposure to the case in the media, it's your sense of it based on that information that it's more likely that George Zimmerman...
Objection is the leading question.
That it's more likely that George Zimmerman is innocent.
That's correct.
I think you also said that you're a bit skeptical sometimes of the media and you take everything with a grain of salt.
Yes, sir.
Would that be regardless of whose side they happen to be on at the moment?
Yes, sir.
Is it possible in your mind that you've formed an impression or an opinion based upon what you've read in the media or heard that isn't accurate?
Absolutely.
And are you open to the possibility that maybe some of the information you've heard that you think is favorable to George Zimmerman isn't completely accurate?
That's possible as well.
And if you hear that kind of information in the courtroom, would you be able to make your decision based just on that?
Yes, sir.
Is there any aspect, well, first of all, let me say, not everything in this case is contested. It's not contested, for example, that the event occurred on February 26, 2012. it's not contested that George Zimmerman shot Trayvon Martin. It's not contested that George Zimmerman claims the shooting was in self-defense. Is there anything that you've heard in the case that gives you such a strong opinion or belief that you couldn't set aside if you heard evidence that was different in the trial?
No, I'm pretty convinced that I haven't heard everything in the case.
If the prosecution, if Mr. Delarionde and his co-counsel were, through competent evidence in the courtroom, able to prove a case beyond a reasonable doubt that George Zimmerman committed the crime of murder, would you find George Zimmerman guilty?
If they provided evidence contrary to what I've heard, yes.
It's their burden of proof. If they can prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he committed the crime of murder, would you convict him?
Yes, sir.
May I have just a moment? I'm going to bounce around just a little bit to help save some time and also not to cover ground that's already been covered. Do you work in a location where you're able to converse throughout the day with coworkers?
Yes, sir.
This case has been a bit of an ongoing conversation at work?
On and off. As news bits come out, people comment. During break, comment good or bad, have a discussion.
So maybe you might see something on the news, or maybe somebody else would see something on the news and say, hey, did you hear about that?
Correct. And some people like to just take the opposite opinion just to keep a lively conversation going.
I see. So sometimes it's a lively debate.
Yes.
For the purpose of debate.
Correct. There's a diverse crowd, people from up north, people from the Midwest, so you've got a lot of different personalities, people from different areas might see things differently, so makes for some lively conversation.
Are there some people that you work with that are fairly new in town?
Yes, some.
And some that have been here all their lives?
Yes, sir.
In that regard, there's a certain part of the work group that you talk with regularly that is pretty firmly convinced that Mr. Zimmerman is guilty?
A few people, yes.
Mm-hmm. And do they engage in the lively debate too?
Sometimes a little too lively, but yes.
Okay. And then I take it there are others that take the opposite position, and there's that conversation.
Yes, sir.
Because the case is current in the news, the actual subject of the discussion might be related to what's going on in any given moment as opposed to the same thing over and over.
Excuse me, I'm not sure.
Yeah, that was terrible. As opposed to every day just debating the same thing, as the news reports different things, does the subject related to the case that's being discussed change?
Yes, if the subject is the recordings, people say, oh yeah, I heard that. You can't really tell who's saying what. Mm-hmm. And oh, well, the expert says this, and as new topics related to the case pop up, there'll be a discussion.
I see. Okay. So it's sort of a current events discussion.
Pretty much. They don't really rehash it so much as if
Uh-huh.
something is new on the news, it'll be discussed.
Does the conversation include other events going on in the world?
Oh, sure.
So it's just the way you guys...
The topic of the day.
You did mention that at one point you had given a $20 donation.
Yes, sir.
A couple of things about that. It was, I didn't hear exactly what you said. I got the sense that it was quite a while ago.
It was shortly after the defense fund and the website, I guess, were started. It was mentioned on the news that he had started a website and that they were looking for donations.
Your donation was $20?
Yes, sir.
Is this not, I hope it's not too personal, but is $20 a lot of money to you?
It's not a lot, but I don't really have a lot to spare either.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel that you have some sort of financial stake in the case somehow?
Not at all.
Because you gave a donation some time ago, do you feel that regardless of the evidence that might, the $20 was in support of George Zimmerman, obviously. Do you feel that as evidence were to come out, especially at the trial, that caused you to change your mind about the evidence or about how you viewed the case, the fact that you gave money, would that make any difference to you?
I'd like to think that I donated to a good cause, but if I didn't, it's not enough that I'm going to be real upset about it either.
Sure. I know that this case has received a lot of attention because it's somewhat divisive. Is that fair?
It's been made divisive, yes.
Does the division in the case or what you know about the case in any way, would that prevent you from deciding the case based just on the evidence from the courtroom?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, let me ask it this way. Do you believe in the presumption of innocence?
Yes,
Do you believe that someone has the right to a fair trial?
absolutely.
And you believe that under the
Objection as
law...
to media?
Do you believe that you can give George Zimmerman a fair trial?
I'd like to think I could be fair.
Thank you.
Thank you. If you'll remain seated for just a moment, and counsel, when you're ready, please approach.